College baseball isn't just about skill. It's about academics, mindset, and much more. In this video, let's break down exactly what it takes for college coaches to notice your player. And before we get started, my name is Evan Mendoza and I have 7 years of professional baseball experience between the St. Louis Cardinals and San Diego Padres. I also played in the World Baseball Classic, 3 years at the D1 level at NC State University, and I was on varsity in high school all 4 years of my high school baseball career. So I'm here to share all of that knowledge with you. If you like this video, make sure to go down below in the description to download our 27-page blueprint on how to get recruited. All right, let's get into it. So the foundation, guys, stats versus metrics. And this is where I get a lot of people mistaken. I think a lot of people want to tell me, yes, my son's hitting 675 in high school. How cool is that? That's amazing. That's so great. My son over here is hitting 490 or 999. Oh my goodness, how is that even possible? My son's so great. Well, who's he playing against, right? So these are the stats, right? Stats don't matter really as much. My son has a 0.01 ERA. My son is so great, right? And this happens so much, all right? So those are the stats. What about metrics? Well, your son's hitting 675. What if really his exit velocity is 55 miles per hour? Is he ready to go play college? I mean, based off of that, yeah, he should be ready to go play college, right? But that, I don't think so, right? Oh my goodness, my son's hitting 999. That's insane. But maybe, that individual is only, maybe he's hitting 80 miles an hour. Better, but not entirely great, right? My son's has a 0.01 ERA. Oh yeah, he throws 95 miles an hour. Okay, that individual might be ready, right? So as you can tell, metrics matter a lot more than what you expect. And really, this comes to the point of like, obviously there's quantitative sports and qualitative sports. Quantitative sports honestly are like track and field, right? The high jump and things like that, where track and field, your 100-yard dash or 100-meter dash is 9.3 seconds, and that's on a clock, right? Someone actually clocked you, that's quantitative. Baseball is kind of leaning towards those quantitative metrics, right? Because it is a qualitative sport where ultimately you need film to showcase to these college coaches that you've got what it takes, because you should move in a certain way, right? So stats don't really matter. So before you start sending me all of your son's stats in the DMs on Instagram, which I check every single day, by the way, tell me more about his metrics, because more times than not, you don't know your son's 60-yard dash. You don't know what his exit velocity is. You don't know his arm strength, right? And if you don't know these things, how are we ever supposed to improve them, right? So first and foremost, we need to understand basically those stats and those metrics. So let's talk about some metrics as far as our 5 tools really necessary to play college baseball. So metric number 1 for power, this is going to be exit velocity off of a tee, more than likely, with a wood bat, right? This is going to be a good test if you guys have a pocket radar or at your local facility, if they have a way to, track exit velocity, whether it's hit tracks, maybe it's Rapsodo, TrackMan, or maybe just a normal radar gun. Try getting exit velocity. And if your son wants to play college baseball at the D1 level, I would say off of a tee, at the very least, 90 miles an hour is what you want to shoot for, all right? Because technically there's no power that's being supplied from the pitcher to hit it even faster, right? You see Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge hit it 118 miles an hour. Ohtani hits it 120 miles an hour. Well, a lot of that power is going to be supplied. Obviously, I'm not, discrediting Ohtani, but a lot of that power is going to be supplied by the pitcher, right? When you hit it off the tee, even professional athletes like Ohtani would probably have a hard time hitting it 105 plus, because there's no power that's being truly generated. As far as your contact skill, this is going to be a hard one to really track, but at the professional level, you really are going to be looking at like the whiff rate slash or contact rate. And this is basically a percentage. For me personally, I was a really good contact hitter, where I think I made contact with every single time that I swung the bat. I think it was like 92%, which is extremely high. I think there are guys like Jose Ramirez. He's really good as far as contact rate. Luis Arias has one of the highest contact rates in all of baseball. But this is going to be a true measurement of how well we have that contact tool in our toolbox. Next up, our arm strength. So if you're a pitcher and you want to go D1, I would say 90 is the new basically cutoff. if you want to play college baseball. But in reality, our Friday night ace at NC State was a lefty who was 5'9", maybe 155 pounds, and threw 84, 86 miles an hour, right? So he didn't throw super hard, but he had 3 great quality pitches. He had a disgusting changeup, and he was able to throw his slider for a strike as well. So that's what made him so dominant. But generally speaking, because he was kind of a little bit of an outlier, you want to be around 90 miles an hour. So next, and then also, sorry, before I get ahead of myself, infield, if you have infield velocity across the diamond, I would say probably at least 85. And then if you're an outfielder, you want to be probably around like 92. Because 92 is going to really showcase to these college coaches that you have what it takes as far as your overall arm strength. All the other tools can hopefully, start to compound on one another, and then you'll ultimately develop at that given university. So as far as our running, this is where it's really important to understand what specific position you play. Because if you're a catcher, honestly, you could run like a 7.7 second 60, and they don't really care. If you are a pitcher, again, don't really care. I don't know what that was, but if you're like, let's say, an infielder, you should probably be sub 7 seconds. And then if you're an outfielder, you want to be sub probably around like 6, 7. And that's going to put you in a really good category of showcasing to these college coaches that you truly are an athlete. They care about the 60-yard dash, and guess what? If you go to a perfect game showcase, the very first thing that you'll ever do at that showcase is run the 60-yard dash. So it's very, very important. Next up, defense. This is going to be one that really takes some time. And I understand not everyone's a showcase style player, and I know I wasn't either. I remember at the Perfect Game showcase that I went to and got some film, and you can look it up on Perfect Game. I don't recommend it because you're probably going to become worse of a baseball player by watching me field at that Perfect Game event at, I believe it was the Fiveplex in Fort Myers. But either way, I missed a ground ball, and I felt like my entire life was over, right? When in reality, I was very well known for my glove throughout high school, college, and pro ball. And ultimately, it's the reason why I was able to play 7 years of professional baseball, because my glove was so elite. So this is something that takes time, honestly, and it's going to be kind of hard to showcase that at a showcase. But ultimately, if you have good hands, you know it. This is going to be something that, like, some people have it, some people don't. If you feel stuck, if you feel robotic in the infield, you probably don't have it, right? So your defense, as far as an infielder, you want to be smooth, you want to be quick, you want to have good footwork. As an outfielder, you want to be able to track a lot of fly balls down. You want obviously will have that foot speed to help you out. Just making the routine plays, understanding the game, the IQ that comes with it. That kind of leads me into that sixth tool, is really understanding the IQ of the game, the deeper level to the game. And the best way that I can explain this is I thought I had the game figured out when I was a senior in high school, committed to a D1 baseball program, which was nationally ranked in the top 10 schools. I literally thought I had the game figured out until I landed at NC State. I stepped foot on campus, and guess what? I was playing against guys 4 years older than me that played in the ACC for 4 straight years. And guess what? Their experiences and also failures, I got to learn through them, right? And ultimately, I did not have the game figured out. Those guys were much more elite than where I was coming into NC State my freshman year. So fast forward 3 years, right? I was getting drafted. I knew I was getting drafted. A lot of MLB scouts were communicating with me, interviewing me, and it was a fun time, right? I knew I had what it took, and the scouts reciprocated that as well. They were communicating with me. A week before the draft, they said, hey, anywhere from like the 3rd round to the 6th round, we can see you getting drafted. So I'm getting pumped up. And ultimately, in that time, I thought I had the game figured out, right? So ultimately, this happened throughout my career multiple times at multiple stages in pro ball, from low A to high A to double A to triple A, and even, big league spring training. I got to learn from guys like Yadier Molina, Fernando Tatis Machado, Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt is an absolute stud in every single little aspect of the game. He really takes all those details very, very seriously. The reason I bring this up is because that 6th tool, sometimes I have communications, messages and conversations with maybe parents, sometimes the athlete, where they feel like I get this sense, and sometimes on calls as well, I get this sense that they've already have everything figured out. And that could be true, but learning from all of my experiences, all I can kind of tell them is like, do you really have the game figured out, right? Because if you think you have the game figured out, you're already putting yourself in a bad position to fail, right? Because there's going to be a point in time where you get punched in the face. How are you able to get back up? if you thought you had the game figured out. It's even more demoralizing, right? When you are a little bit more humble about it, you understand there is room for growth, you have that growth mindset, that's truly where the difference maker is going to be. So understanding that the IQ aspect of your game specifically can always increase going up and to the right. And if you don't have that growth mindset, that is okay. Ideally, you can be an average baseball player. That's cool. I just like working with serious high school baseball players that obviously have that growth mindset to always want to get better and better no matter what. So another area that's really important to discuss is how we deal with our overall mental toughness, right guys? Because mental toughness is a huge component of the game of baseball nowadays. You want to be mentally tough and physically tough, but this is ultimately how we handle failure, right? So physically, there's going to be times where we physically fail, right? There might be a ground ball that hits our chest, we make an error, we physically make that mistake. There are going to be times where we mentally make a mistake, and this is going to be the times where, honestly, in professional baseball, you're not really allowed to make, mental mistakes. That's something that I learned from Yachty. He said, hey, you're going to boot a ground ball at shortstop. It's going to happen. You're going to drop a fly ball. That's going to happen. It happens to all of us. But mentally having mistakes, not backing up a base, maybe not understanding bunt D or cutoffs and relays or first and third defense or really any of those, right? That's where professional baseball players really draw the line and say, hey, enough's enough. Like, I understand you made an error, but you can't have these mental mistakes, right? So how do we handle these failures? Ultimately, when we have the ability to physically make adjustments throughout the game, think pitch to pitch or even at bat to at bat, obviously the best elite baseball players will make adjustments from pitch to pitch. High school baseball players might make adjustments from game to game. College baseball players might make adjustments from at-bat to at-bat, right? So how quickly are we able to learn from our mistakes? That's how we're able to physically make those adjustments. Well, what if we go 0 for 4? What happens next? Do we have that framework to follow along to ultimately understand our mental growth and how we're handling that mental struggles of going 0 for 4 or 0 for 8 or 0 for 25 like some of my teammates did, right? Those are slumps. I hear it all too often. High school baseball players are in slumps after not getting a base hit for one game. That is not a slump, guys. You need to kind of reel it back in because that's just one bad game. That's going to happen. You can make those adjustments. But right here in this middle, this is where you are able to check off that you have the right mental capabilities to handle failure. You also have the abilities to physically make those adjustments. And this is when you're ultimately ready for D1/college baseball. And this is ultimately a great time because you ultimately have so much confidence in the game. You understand that no matter what failures that come your way, you're going to get after it the next day. You're going to work on those things, and that's where that mental strength really comes in. Now, I really want to talk about some very important things that maybe might bore your player, but hopefully you can understand how important it is as well. But, as far as our GPA, yes, it matters. It doesn't matter as much as you guys would think. As long as you have a 3.0, I would say majority of the time these D1 coaches ultimately say, they'll see 3.0 and they'll basically say, okay, he's getting it done in the classroom. And that's ultimately what you want, right? If you're under 2.0, it might be a little bit of like not necessarily a red flag, but maybe like an orange flag saying like, hey, we might need to just have a little bit more conversations with him. If he turns out to develop into a stud, this is a guy that we might have to roll the dice on, but ultimately, if we can have a conversation with him tomorrow to tell him, hey, get it done in the classroom. I want to see you not only develop as a baseball player, but also develop as a student, get better grades. You get to kind of see, as far as the college coach's perspective, you get to see how coachable that player is, right? So yes or no, do you think that, player is coachable? And this typically is a question that college coaches will ask the high school coach or maybe the travel ball coach. Ultimately, this is a quick little 5-minute conversation. Hey, what do you think about Johnny? Do you think Johnny's really good? Do you think he has the ability to play in college? Do you think he's coachable? Have you had any issues with him? Is he a good teammate? Quick conversation, hang up, right? And ultimately, you want yourself to be in that yes category. You are a good teammate. You are coachable. You have good grades, things like that. The thing that you never want is to deal with any type of eligibility issues, right? Especially in college. And I hate to break it to you guys, but I took my academics very, very seriously. I studied more than probably anyone else. I studied aerospace engineering, but in college, some of those classes were just incredibly difficult. And I have no problem telling you this right now on this YouTube video, but I just had an incredibly hard time staying eligible, mostly because my schedule with baseball didn't necessarily mesh together well with the classes offered for aerospace engineering. So I took the minimum amount of classes where if I failed one class, which there was a couple that I was on the cusp of, ultimately I did pass, but if I failed them, I become ineligible for baseball. The ultimate reason why I went to NC State. So you never want that to happen. So now let's talk about the path to college baseball. First and foremost, you need to have that physical and mental readiness. Obviously, this is very important. You cannot live without the physical and mental challenges that the game is going to provide. Next up, you really want to take care of the academics. I'm having a hard time spelling while talking to you guys, but you want to take care of your classroom. You want to take care of your academics, your schoolwork, your homework, your studying. Get it done as fast as you can so you can put all your time and effort into eating well, sleeping well, and developing as a baseball player. Next, you want to make sure that you have good coachability and good work ethic. Without these two things, do not be prepared to play college baseball at any level, whether it's D3 or NAIA, JUCO, D2, D1, at any level. You have to understand when coaches tell you something, they're looking after your best interest, and ultimately they want to see you succeed. And if you don't have a good work ethic, you're probably, I've never been one to believe that you can stay the same in anything. So let's say you throw 90 miles an hour all of a sudden, you're not going to just always throw 90 miles an hour. You're either going to go down or you're going to go up. Right? So I want to make sure that you have that work ethic to always be going up and to the right. So after you have that coachability and work ethic, now what? Now we get into recruiting. And this is the fun part. Obviously, this is where you have those communications with college coaches. You get to email them. You get to share with them your highlight video, your not necessarily stats, but your metrics. You get to share with them who you are as a baseball player and start letting them paint that picture of who you are. And I always love to say you're handing over a blank canvas to these college coaches the very first time that you ever mention that you exist on this planet, right? When in reality, they didn't really know that you existed beforehand. But you send an email, maybe it's a cold email right to that coach, maybe it's an assistant coach, maybe it's a head coach. There's definitely the right way to do it, there's definitely a wrong way to do it, but the very first time that they hear your name, they get to paint, brushstroke by brushstroke, who you are or who your player is every time that they hear your name or hear their name. Maybe they watch a highlight video, they get to paint a little bit more rather than if you didn't include a highlight video, things like that. And with the proper strategy in the recruiting process, now we get to find some college success. That is what you call a doctor's handwriting, but now you finally truly get some college success because you've actually had that plan developed out, not only for your recruiting strategy, but also for your mental and physical development as well as a baseball player to really truly maximize you or your player's overall potential. Now, if you or your player is a high school baseball player who wants to play college baseball, go down below in the description to learn more about the triple play and book a call with me. You can learn how we can implement the triple play for your player to get the attention from college coaches.